Hi, and thanks for joining me for Chasing Energy. I'm your host, Daniel Lucas. Today's guest is Ryan Ploekelman. Ryan is the host of the podcast, The Adventure Jogger. The Adventure Jogger focuses on runners who are not in the mainstream. Now, he does have the occasional running celebrity, but for the most part, his podcasts focus on things like a mom who has conquered cancer and wants to run a 50K, a working father who decides he dreams of running 100 miles. Well, when they run these things, they speak to Ryan and they talk about what they learned from the experience and the stories of how they went. I've actually been on Ryan's podcast a few times talking about some of my adventures. Ryan and I have shared several races together, and we talk about that in this podcast. So let's talk about a few things you should expect to hear about in this episode. Running in the new normal, how the pandemic has impacted running. And I should probably note, this was one of the very first interviews I recorded, and it was in the first official lockdown, I think, is when this took place. So that should give you an idea of the timeline for this podcast. Trail running is an affordable sport. That's another thing we talk about. Living for others. I am the one who decides to be happy, meaning choose happiness for yourself. It's your choice. We talk about Man's Search for Meaning, the book by Victor Frankll. Creating a legacy for yourself. Good selfish versus bad selfish. I share a little bit about my philosophy on why I run trails. I'll go ahead and give you the nutshell on that. I go to the gym to blow steam. I go to the trails to find answers. Ryan shares the story of running his first 100-miler and how it was a very big bonding experience for both his father and son. And then lastly, we talk about you're never able to completely silence your inner critic. So choose to believe that you are not your thoughts. Don't let the voices that you hear determine who you are. Live for others and choose happiness. Yeah, it sounds a little woo-woo, I know, but as you'll see, he presents it in a fashion that makes it very digestible. I am so proud of Ryan Ploekelman and how he chose to join me on this episode and really be vulnerable with me and share some parts of his thinking that are not known by a lot of the people that currently listen to his podcast. I encourage you to check out Ryan's podcast. Just Google the words, The Adventure Jogger. You can stream the episodes that appeal to you right from your browser. I hope you enjoy this episode. Please leave a review online. Otherwise, this podcast will likely end up in podcast purgatory after a few episodes. So thank you for your time and enjoy the episode with Ryan. Ryan Ploekelman, thank you for being here today, buddy. How are you?
I'm great, Daniel Lucas. How are you? It's great to see you again.
Great to see you, bro. Ryan, how many podcasts have you done, buddy?
Combining the two, I'm probably 300-400 episodes.
Oh my gosh, man. I feel so humbled right now. I know that I'm going to get schooled here. So I'm out to let you lead on this thing.
No, I've led enough podcasts. I'm really excited about the experience of being on the other side of the microphone because you talk to so many people and you interview so many people, but to be on the other side it's always interesting because I know what I'm looking for in a guest. And I'm wondering, am I, as this is recorded and released, I'm going to listen back to it and go, was I everything I would want in a guest, or did I fail miserably on the other side of the mic?
Oh, I'm not worried about that. So let me start there and ask you, it is such a labor of love to make that podcast, and you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
What is it that inside of you says this is a message that needs to be heard?
Well, my original podcast, which is no longer available, you can look up that pre-pandemic drama when you're bored. I was just looking for an outlet to kind of showcase some people, interesting runners and what have you. Because when I got into the podcast game, a lot of the focus of that media was on runners that were west of the Mississippi. And so they interviewed a lot of California runners and that sort of thing. And that's okay. There's a lot of great runners out there, but there was really not a whole lot of platforms for people east of the Mississippi. And I also kind of thought too, that there was a lot of focus on elite athletes. And I think sometimes the best stories are shared by the people that aren't winning the races, the people that are, they have a job and they're not a professional runner. They got to work running into their life somewhere. And I just thought that something that could showcase great talent from another part of the country, but also showcase really interesting people of all levels of running. There's great stories to be shared at the front of the pack. There's great stories to be shared in the middle of the pack, and the back of the pack sometimes has the best stories of all.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, man. The stories that we get the books that sell so much, and I know you had Dean Karnassus on, and
I know.
that sort of really put ultra running on the map. But the stories that people can relate to, it's actually not the front of the pack people. Those people are the even less than 1% when you think about the ones who are podiuming on ultra running.
Yeah.
To be in that level of fitness and dedication, you have to be like a freak about it. And it's not to say you can't be a good family person. I'm saying you have to be absolutely committed to the sport. I'll put ultra running against any other sport in terms of hours of training and dedication. Yep. I mean, professional triathlon's pretty close.
Yeah.
They're probably interchangeable, but either one of those sports, it's very easy to become a widow to the sport. I mean, that's all you have.
Oh, for sure. Because, and it's a very easily addictive sport.
Yeah.
Where, it's, you have a race, you have some success, and all of a sudden you didn't think you could finish that 50K or 50 miler or 100 miler. And then you do, and you're like, oh, but I could do this better next time, and I could do this better. And I love the way I felt at the end. So I need to get that high again. And so, yeah, it's so easy to get addicted to this sport.
Yeah. The rush that you get, which, let's just be straight, in ultra running is directly relative to the amount of pain you endure. That sort of yin and yang or whatever, but it is addicting, and it is also, it's therapeutic. It can make you a better person. It can make you a worse person. I've had several conversations with some of my running buddies, and I was like, what percentage of us do you think would be full out drug addicts or alcoholics if we did not have this sport?
Right.
And the number we came back with was about half. I think that's the thing about anytime you pick up a habit after the age of 40, you're like, is this going to destroy me or make me better?
Right.
I mean, when you join a club that's like a whiskey club or something, you're like, okay, this is not going to help me be a better person, but I enjoy it for whatever reason. Let's hope you can manage it.
Right.
Or tailgating or something like that. And picking up those things after 40 that are actually going to make you a healthier, happier person. I really applaud people who are willing to say, I'm not done growing. Right.
Yeah.
And it is hard. It is so hard, especially for us Gen Xers, that I'm gonna stereotype and say, if you're anything like me, you spent a huge chunk of your life working overtime, going to school, all those things, and then you get to that point where you're 40 and you just want to, part of you wants to just coast, right?
Right.
Ultra running for me, and I'd be anxious to hear your opinion, was my psychological way of saying, if you're going to coast in your professional life or whatever, I'm not going to let you coast in your personal life. And I don't think I realized at the time, but you were right about it. You finish 2 or 3 and you go, I don't think it's going to be as easy to step away from this sport as I thought, because that fulfillment's so hard to get.
Right. It really is. And it's hard to replicate that feeling. For me, the sport was, I got into running. God, I want to say, you found the pictures of me online. We talked about that.
I know the pre-running pictures were around 2010.
Yeah, the tubby Ryan. So right around that time, I found running and started. It was the day after Thanksgiving. I was really out of shape. I was bigger than I'd been in my entire life. Like 200 and you know how we all tend to exaggerate, when we catch the fish, and the fish is really only like 3 inches long. And then by the time we tell the story the 10th time, it
was a shark, by the
it's
way.
a sturgeon. It's this massive fish. So
Sturgeon.
I want to say I was 250 pounds, but I was probably like 230 pounds, and I just wasn't happy. And so I drove my car around a little block in my neighborhood to kind of figure out like how long is this distance, and it was a third of a mile. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to run this little loop around my neighborhood 3 times to get a mile, and damn it, I'm gonna run a mile the day after Thanksgiving, so Black Friday.
How old were you, Ryan?
That would make me 32, 33, so like mid 30s.
Yeah, I started at 30, so we actually shared.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm gonna run around the block, and so I did that. And I ran. It was horrible. It was like 15-minute mile, and I felt like just death. And I was like, oh God, why do people even do this for fun? This is horrible. It's the stupidest thing ever. But then I went out the next day and the next day and the next day, and it just started, the mile would become easy, and then I'd do 2 miles. And when the 2 miles became easy, I'd do 3 miles. And I was kind of, the zone I was happy living in was that zone right there. And then my brother, Darren, he got into triathlons, and he would do sprint and Olympic distance triathlons. And he got out of it because it was consuming everything. Like, it was all consuming. And his wife was like, okay, it's either the marriage or the triathlon. And so he gave up triathlon and said, well, hey, why don't you use my bike? Why don't you do one to see how you like the sport? I am a horrible swimmer. I learned that training for a triathlon, and I did a sprint level. So this ain't Ironman. But everyone assumes when you say you've done a triathlon, they all assume that you've done an Ironman. No.
Yeah, they also assume you look like one of those professional Ironman.
I've never looked like that in my life.
I think most people will be shocked if you ever go to an Ironman race. Wait till the first third of people pass, and then see who comes about, in that, like, during the marathon, and you'll be shocked at how many people are out there, and they don't look anything like what we think they were.
Right, because the TV cameras are usually shut off by the time those folks roll in. But yeah, I remember doing the training, and then I really liked the running. I hated the swimming. The swimming was the worst part. And I remember a friend of mine said, well, yeah, you all jump in the water at the same time, and sometimes a person will grab your ankle and pull you under the water and hit you on the head. And I'm like, that sounds miserable, but I've signed up, and I'm going to do this thing. And so I did it, and it was okay, but I really loved the running. I didn't want the biking. For me, I do enjoy cycling, but I think for me, and this is just me, so don't be flooding Daniel's inbox with this guy's a jag bag, but I always like biking. There's a certain level of performance that you can buy. You can buy yourself a certain level of performance, and running, you can't buy yourself a level of performance. If I'm wearing Hoka's or Sauconys, what's the difference but maybe milliseconds, right? And I'm not dropping $400 on fancy Nike shoes. So that was my hang up on cycling, although my wife and I do ride our bikes together. But I was like, this is not going to be a thing that I do any further. But I really like the running. And so that turned into a half marathon, and I did that. And then it was a marathon, and I did a couple of marathons, and I realized that I am never gonna be very fast at these marathons. I wonder if I can outrun these guys distance-wise. Yeah. And so, you read the book, you discover Ultramarathon Man by Dean Karnazes, and you're like, oh my God.
Is that book not the most intimidating thing to read when you've never run an ultra? I mean, you read that and you go, this is insane. This is absolutely insane.
Oh, yeah.
And when that book came out, I think a lot of people were just totally shocked that it was even humanly possible.
Yeah, it really was. I think a lot of people feel like at 26.3 miles, you die. You go 26.2, and then you're on the cusp of death, and then 26.3, you're in a casket.
So true story, they would not let females into the marathon for many, many, many years. For the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I think they wouldn't let them into marathons in general. But the official medical reason was they were worried their entrails would get, or their insides
uterus
would
fall out.
The uterus would fall out.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't it funny when we hear stuff like that and we're like, that is so, and especially with how fast the females are today, they're insane. I mean, insanely fast.
Yeah, you look back at the world run by men and you go, God, there was a whole lot of stupid crap. You know,
A lot of stupid decisions, man.
like,
that definitely falls into one of them.
like, was there any scientific evidence for this? Nope, not at all. It's just some guy said, like, well, he was probably smoking. He was a doctor, and he was smoking and going, well, you probably shouldn't let women run the marathon. I've heard their uterus will fall out at 26 miles. We don't want to kill these women, you know.
Yeah. Very Mad Men style.
right. Martini in one hand and a cigarette in the other. So that kind of progressed and did the whole 50K and 50 miler and 100 miler and that sort of thing.
That's a big thing though, man. A 50 miler 50 milers legitimately by any standards. That's a pretty big accomplishment.
I agree. I actually think 50 milers are harder than 100 milers. I think it's a mental thing because your body wants to go a little faster because it knows, like, I think your mind, when you get it into your noodle, you're like, okay, you're going to be doing this all day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your body kind of prepares itself for, okay, this isn't going to end anytime soon. Let's just kick in, survival mode for however long we need to do that. But a 50 miler, it's like, oh boy, I can get this done in less than a half a day. Let's crank it.
I think there's some truth to that. I think if you want to talk about what's most painful, I think in some ways a marathon is more painful.
Oh, way more.
Just because you're all about the pace during a marathon. You're rarely just sort of recreationally running it. And we're not going to digress into this, but getting back into running,
mm-hmm.
I've noticed that I always ache more when I try to do like speed work on certain, and I'm like, why do I care so much about speed work, dude? It's just habit. I just jump into the speed work.
So I've often said, and if you've listened to my podcast, The Adventure Jogger, I often say this: running is a sport. Nobody cares. We do it for ourselves.
Nobody cares.
And nobody cares. Soul cares.
Nobody cares about ultra running.
Nope.
Nobody cares. If you don't believe me, look at the finish line in some of these pictures. Even if it's the best people in the world, there's 3 people there that are basically like there to see their mom or their friend. There's nobody there. Nobody cares.
I remember my wife is my first one that she saw. I could tell she was proud, but she wasn't as excited about it as I was.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't like, oh man, this is great. But I will say, my wife has recently gotten into running, and she used the pandemic as an excuse to go run because she was like, I don't want to go to the gym because I don't want to get the Rona. So I got to find some way to exercise. So she started running, and she went from couch to half marathon, and she's fully into running now. And like,
no. After all these years of you doing it and your wife picks it up,
mm-hmm.
is there a certain where she says, I get it now? Or is it a point where do you push her at all? Do you just sit back and encourage her? What is your role here?
My role is encourager and long run companion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was actually there, and she's like, will you run my first half marathon with me? I'm like, of course. Yeah. I'd love to do that. Cause she was like, she ran a 5K, she did a 10K. And I'm like, well, if you can do a 10K, you can do a half marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And she foolishly believed her husband. And so we signed up, and I'm like, okay, we're doing this thing. And it was so awesome to be there for her,
mm-hmm.
and to see her experience that doubt of, oh my God, can I even finish this thing? To, the elation of, oh my God, I did just finish this thing. It was a way to look at running through another set of eyes from another perspective. And it really, it's been, I love the fact now that my wife is a runner. It's great. She says, you want to go for a run? Her pace is not my pace, but I will gladly run her pace any day of the week.
Yeah. And so I'll interject a training tip here. It's always good to at least once a week or so to run with people slower than you.
Mm-hmm.
And because when you're running with the competitive pack, there's a reason you're not supposed to run hard every single day in terms of recovery. And when you're running with people that are slower with you, you're doing them a service because you're kind of encouraging them, but you're also taking the pressure off yourself and saying, I'm not going to get caught up in a race today.
I have a guy I run with every week. His name is Travis, one of my best friends. and he is a Green Beret in the Army, and everything he does is intense. And so when we run, there is no like I know it's going to be a hard run when I run with Travis, so I have to balance those out with running with my wife. So I will say this: if you are a runner and you're slower, and someone faster is running with you, stop apologizing for your pace.
Mm-hmm.
The person wants to be there, and they want to support you, and it doesn't matter if they're running 2 minutes slower than they usually run. It's about the camaraderie and being there for you, but just stop apologizing. You're not doing anything wrong.
The fact that they didn't drop you says you have a good friend.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If they just drop you as soon as you start to go slow and you're on an unknown trail,
well, then you're in the cycling group. You're in the Wednesday cycling group when they drop
Yeah.
you. That's how that goes.
The phrase you keep hearing is the new normal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what does the new normal look like? Well, I think that what we're never going to want to go back to the way things were, because there's a lot of parts of our lives where we're like, no, I kind of like this part of it. And one of those is more quality time with our family.
Yes.
I mean, I have because I don't drive like I used to.
Yeah.
I have way more quality time with, and my kids do like 2 days a week remote.
Mm-hmm.
And all. I've never had this much family time in my entire life. And one of the things I really like that you're telling me is the pandemic caused your wife to pick up a sport. And you know, I try not to push people into running, but
right.
if you're going to run, try it outside, first of all.
Yes.
Don't think that running on a treadmill is in any way as fulfilling as running outside.
Yeah.
If you can do that, more power to you.
Yeah.
And then if you want to get really therapeutic, I say get in the woods. And the Japanese, I believe, call it forest bathing,
Mm-hmm.
where there's actual chemicals in the air or in the forest that calm your nerves. And I actually saw a documentary this week where they were measuring people's blood before and after they walked in the trail for 3 hours.
Really?
Their cortisol levels, everything was made better by like a 3 hour. And it was a 3 hour hike.
Yeah.
But they're talking about how much stress that people in Japan have because they're working like 60 hours a week. And how do they manage that stress? Well, that's one of their methods.
I think it's sound for sure. And I think
Mm-hmm.
you're right. You made a great point about, the pandemic showed us maybe it caused us to stop and look at our lives. Now there's a lot of people that are hurting, and God, you feel horrible knowing that, there's people whose jobs and livelihoods were put on hold because of this.
Oh yeah, anything in the hospitality industry has been turned upside down.
Oh, and that's the thing, and not to get political at all, but that's what drove me nuts about when the pandemic first hit, and this stimulus package was thrown out. It was like, well, I still have a job, my wife still had a job, we didn't need any money, but what
Mm-hmm.
about all those industries that were telling, hey, you can't be open, sucks to be you? Like for me, I look at movie theaters. I love going to the movies. I've got a huge TV and all that stuff, but it's not the same as sharing something with community, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're all in a dark room. You're sharing the joy or the excitement or the thrill or the danger together, and you're having that experience with complete strangers, and you're sharing those reactions, and you're living that moment
Mm-hmm.
with each other. And you just can't replace that with sitting in your living room watching a movie in the comfort of your own home, because it's almost like the movie theater is a sacred space.
Yeah.
In a way, because it's not your home. It's something it's a little above that, right?
Exactly.
And so for me, oh God, if the pandemic causes us to lose movie theaters, I will lose my mind. But
that's actually a good segue for how races, they're doing all this self-time. You sign up for the race now and it's self-timed.
Yeah.
And I actually coach one or two athletes, and I will tell you, it is much, much more difficult to hit your target time in the last half of a marathon self-timed when you're by yourself,
Oh,
as opposed to
yes.
like you've got the adrenaline rush if you're passing people and you're looking at your watch and you're like, I'm going to crack this time. It is so much more difficult to stay motivated when you're running a track.
Oh, for sure. No, for
20
sure.
Even though the
Yeah.
terrain is so much easier when you're running a track, it's just mentally, it's durable or hamster type miles.
We feed off each other. We need to be together and experience things together. There's a camaraderie in suffering. Even if you don't know the person next to you that's huffing and puffing, the barriers break down really quickly. And even if you're not sharing a conversation, you're sharing a moment. And I really think there's an energy exchange there. There is an energy in groups. There's an energy in large crowds of people all trying to do the same thing. And when you just try and do it yourself, you're missing out on that incredible energy that a crowd brings to it.
And I can attest, Ryan, that you always bring that energy. I can think of a few times where we met each other in the middle of a race.
Yeah.
And you weren't having maybe the best today, but your disposition was always positive. And there were times where I was not having a good day. In fact, if you want to know a little bit of irony, I looked up your race results. And Savage Gulf.
Yes.
The first time you did it,
mm-hmm.
That race is as close as I ever come to podiuming in an ultra. It's so funny. I have several stories where I should have been on the podium and then something happened that got, off course or, well, anyway, Savage Gulf, I had a good race and you didn't your first time.
Yeah.
And then the second time,
we flipped it.
The last time that you and I met out there, the roles were reversed. I remember being like 5 miles from the finish and everything had fallen apart. And as I recall, I stepped on a snake when I was hiking up that big hike. And I was so tired that I was like, I hope it doesn't do anything because I can't stop. If I just do anything, I'm just going to fall over on the ground. That's how tired I was. There was no reaction out of me, but you came by and tapped me on the shoulder and was like, hey man, good job. Bye.
Yeah. And then I didn't see you again for a while. No. And I think, and that's a relatively new development for me. And I think running maybe amplified that, or I don't know, just gave me more time to practice that. But I remember a good chunk of my life, Daniel, where I wasn't happy. And I was looking for the external reasons why I wasn't happy. It was everyone else's fault why I wasn't happy. It was my wife's fault because she didn't do this. It was my kids' fault because they didn't do this. It was my parents' fault because they didn't do this, or my job's fault because of this, or my coworkers' fault. And I kind of discovered that, wait a minute, I'm the one who decides to be happy. And I'm the one that, you can choose to be a victim of everyone, all these circumstances, or you can choose to take ownership of your attitude, of your disposition. So I was supposed to go on vacation. This was right after Thanksgiving. Looking forward to it, taking the whole family down to Florida. We're staying in this wonderful house in Florida. It was going to be a great week of relaxation for the whole family. 2 days before we're supposed to leave, I get a call. I can't go down there because the current occupant of the house has tested positive for COVID-19. They need to quarantine there for the next 2 weeks. I'm plumb out of luck. And so I was like, okay. But then I realized at work, I had a lot of new people starting, that me being there would make their transition into the work culture easier. They wouldn't just be sitting around. I could actually start getting them involved and trained, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of be there and help and just kind of do that. And so I looked at it as not as a negative, but an opportunity to, okay, well, now I have an opportunity to bring these people into the fold a week earlier than I would have had I left. It's just the way you look at it.
So you highlighted two things I want to talk about there. One is you you took a situation where you could have allowed yourself to be upset and frustrated, and you turned it into an opportunity to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, it's very hard to do in the moment, but one of the things I like to do when I'm really pissed off is do something nice for someone completely out of the blue.
Yeah.
And it could be flowers for your mom. It could
Yeah.
be, taking your son out to eat out of the blue. But I have found that, if you can silence that voice in your head that says someone should be doing this for me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the one that's having a bad day. I didn't do
Yeah.
anything wrong. If you can get past that voice and you can just start the act of, like you said, being a mentor to some people who are coming on board, and you do the act, it's like all of a sudden that voice in your head gets silenced. And what I'll say is one of my favorite mantras that I'm not claiming that I live by this effectively, but is Victor Frankl.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
Man's Search for Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite books of all time.
It's on the bookshelf up. Here it is. Right. You ready?
Yeah.
So funny. We didn't plan this, but here
Oh,
it is. Right on
there
the
it is,
bookshelf, right
man.
in front of me. Yeah.
Every time I reread that book every other year, and I come back with a new insight. But
Mhm.
his statement is that between stimulus and response,
Mhm.
there is a choice. Okay.
Yeah.
And what you do in that choice is what, now he doesn't use the word legacy, but it defines your legacy
Right.
in life.
Right.
And I think about that a lot, especially when we know that our kids, it's almost like a toothache. They know how to bypass all the other stuff that we have
Yeah.
with our business partners and our friends.
Mhm.
But your kid can say something, you just look at them and go, I could just snap right here, man. And But that space, when you talk about the trip getting set back, and for crying out loud, how many times have we trained for an ultra and something happened where it was like completely beyond our control?
Mhm.
This is where you get into, I can be the kind of husband or father that walks around really pissed off because either the race didn't go like I wanted or something happened before I got to the race. And then all they're going to do, because again, they don't care.
Right. They don't.
Is they're going to say, why do you even do this damn sport, man?
Mhm. Yep.
Because, if you're going to walk around pissed off, why do it in the first place?
Right.
It's to say that, you look at that, that's stepping up to a higher, level on Maslow's hierarchy, man.
Well, it's one of those things where, I mean, you really do have a choice. And for me, when I decided that my happiness would come internally, and no one else was responsible for my happiness but myself. It wasn't my wife's fault that I wasn't happy. It wasn't my kid's fault that I wasn't happy. It was my fault that I wasn't happy. And I needed to do things to bring happiness. I had to change the way I looked at things. We define our reality. If all you're looking for is red cars, all you're going to see is red cars. That's.
I forgot whether it was Marcus Aurelius or not, but there is no good or bad, but thinking that makes it so.
Yep, that sounds like Marcus Aurelius right there. Boy, we're getting deep into that.
But when you spent as many thousands of hours out on the trail as we have, you have time to.
You think about things. No, you think about things, and for me, one thing that I thought about, and again, these are my personal things. I'm not trying to convert anybody or anything, but what do we leave behind?
Mm-hmm.
Every faith has their ideas, right? But what we really leave behind is our legacy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
But what is our legacy? It's how people think of us, right? And of course, time destroys everything. Everyone will be forgotten at some point. But
dust in the wind, buddy.
Exactly.
Dust in the wind.
That's Kansas right there. But no,
right.
but our legacy is how people remember us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you want your legacy to be, my God, that guy was a prick, or do you want people to remember you as a loving person, as a a kind person, a happy person, and that's really all you have when it's all said and done. That's what you have. That's what remains of Ryan Ploekelman when my heart stops beating, and that's what remains of Daniel Lucas when your heart stops beating and they put you in the ground. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that's left of you is the experiences others had with you. And so making that a happy experience, it's a different way of living your life in service of others it's selfish in a way, because you're like, yeah, because I want people to remember me fondly. I want people to have good experiences with me. So when I'm gone, they look back at the experiences they've had with me fondly, instead of being that guy's an insufferable prick or whatever.
Yeah. So I've actually been thinking about this lately, because people will say anytime you do something good, even if you won't admit it, you're being selfish, because it makes you feel good about yourself. Mm-hmm. So what I look at it now is there's good selfish and bad selfish.
Oh yeah,
okay,
absolutely, absolutely. If you want to be selfish and change the world, that's great. It's the positive and the negative, right? Because if you're, is it all focused on you? That's when it's negative selfish. If it's all focused on you, if it's all about you, but it's also, but so that the positive selfishness is you're pointing it outwards towards others. And the actions towards others that you do will give you that good feeling. That's where the selfishness comes in. And heck, if everybody was that kind of selfish, what an amazing world we'd live in, right?
That's right. Didn't know we were going to get a lesson in like legacy karma here today. So going back, your approach here was, I own my happiness. No one else does.
Yeah.
And I determined that. So tell me how that got you into who you are today, which is a much more balanced version.
Well, running, I was able to find some peace in that. And I think it was, I think I always hate when you see online and people will, if you're depressed, just buy a pair of running shoes. I think that is an oversimplistic view of mental health. And when you post that, no one thinks you're cool. Everyone thinks you're a prick. I just like when you post that on if someone's dealing with depression, you go buy some running shoes and get in the woods. No one thinks you're a great person. So stop posting that. But no, but I do think there is, for some people, it works for some people to get in shape, and you get those endorphins and the body change, and just being in better shape makes it easier to be happy. But what you were talking about as well, you have all this time for self-reflection, right? When you're running, you're just by yourself and you're with your thoughts for hours and hours and hours. And I think examining yourself, like, and asking yourself and creating space between your between your emotions and your reactions, creating just a little gap there and going, why do I always feel this way? And those things come up on a long run. You're just like, I got a real problem with this. And every time this happens, I react this way. I wonder why that is. As you're running down the trail, and looking at the birds and the trees.
So what you're saying here is, in your case, and I can certainly agree, is running allows the space between stimulus and response to be a little wider.
Yep.
And it gives you a little bit more control, which, if for anyone listening who's not a running, I think meditating is supposed to do something similar. In the sense
mindfulness.
Of, you being aware of the anger or the reaction as it arises, but being able to pause before it takes over.
Oh, for
just
sure.
adding
for sure.
that few seconds in there. But I love that. I have a mantra I used to use, and it was that I go to the gym to blow steam, and I go to the trails when I need answers.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's really, you're right, because it's that analyzing yourself. And and mindfulness is something I stumbled across on the journey as well, and in meditation and that sort of thing. I'm not at Tim Olson's level of that, but there's no retreats hosted by me, but it's something that I found very useful to create that space and be able to really examine, like, why do I react this way when this happens? And you unpack that, and you discover that, it's because it makes me feel this way. Well, why does it make me feel this way? And you just unpack and unpack and unpack and unpack. And in between the running and the mindfulness, it just kind of, I was able to shed some things that I didn't like about myself. And that's a continuing process. I've been shedding things I don't like about myself,
Right.
even this year.
A great metaphor for that shedding, I've not heard that before, by the way. A great metaphor for shedding is if you ever get the chance to sweep a road marathon, look at how much stuff people shed, knowing that they'll never see that gear again. They'll throw a jacket, a water bottle, goose. And for someone who's as cheap as me, I remember seeing that stuff and going, wow, this is some good free stuff. If I didn't feel like carrying it all to the finish, I'd probably grab some.
You know, when you see name brand stuff on the ground, you're like, this must be an expensive race.
Oh yeah. In Iron Man, you'll see like the Nathan handhelds. They'll throw those on the ground. I'm like,
that's $30.
That's $30, man. and there's a half a goo in here, man. This has got to be good for something. We're gonna start some type of dumpster diver runner club.
Oh God, that'd be great. That would be great. We should just, someone should try to live a year with just running gear they find at races, just that's discarded at races. Like, a year of living frugally.
There's somebody's social media going viral right there. There's an idea for the universe of live a year off of only wearing running gear shed from those events, which rock and roll marathon or something like that.
Right, exactly. Which, by the way, running gear can be as cheap or as expensive as you want. Good Lord, there's $100 shorts. Is there any short technology that is worth $100? I don't know.
It's the logo, man.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not the shorts technology.
And running shoes aren't cheap either, man.
No, they're getting more and more expensive.
If you go online now, the 170 mark is kind of becoming. People are like, "Oh yeah, it's $170." I'm like, I never would have imagined myself dropping that kind of money on a pair of shoes.
And I can imagine that when you go to the store, Daniel, and you need a new pair of shoes, and you see $170, there's a big part of old cheapy Daniel going,
It's a big part. I can tell you this, okay? This true story. I found a pair of shoes I liked.
Yeah.
And REI started a program where they were selling refurbished shoes. And I liked them.
Yeah.
They're Topos. And I said, man, these shoes are really good. I think I paid they were on sale for like $45 or something.
Yeah.
And I bought like 4 pairs. I have not gone through them all. But there will be a couple of tears shed when that last pair goes out. But
refurbished Topos.
Yeah, it was like a one-time deal. I think REI was basically saying, we're just getting rid of all these shoes that people brought back after a week or whatever. But all that to say, like when the 4 shoes came in, my girlfriend was like, now, why the hell do you need 4 shoes? Really? I was like, this is 2 years. This is 2 years of shoes. I am done. I don't have to look. I don't have to shop. I don't have to get online. I'm done for 2 years.
Right.
Going back to our quality of life approaches, Ryan.
Yeah.
One thing that I think has become more popular, and I'm glad it has, is that the priority of owning things versus building an experience.
Yes.
Is changing. I think in our generation, there's more people like our age going, okay, I can get a bigger car or a better, faster car, or I can take the family on vacation and just get a memorable vacation and do X, Y, Z, or something along those lines. And in the thing about when it comes to like, if you're a trail runner, you don't actually need to spend much to have a great vacation, because we're all about, can I have a cabin? Do I have access to a Trader Joe's? And is there a trail nearby? If you can give me those 3 things, I'm pretty much good. I don't really need for much more.
And they're relatively inexpensive. Trail races are getting more expensive. And you see, especially in the 50K range, you see a lot of 50Ks now in the $200 range, which I think is ridiculous.
Oh, wow. I've been out of the loop.
Yeah. Well, get ready to start paying. Maybe I exaggerated, much like my weight, but they're getting more and more expensive, and everything is kind of going up, but it's still relatively inexpensive. But yeah, you're right. When I look back at just the last 6 months, last 9 months, what I remember most are the experiences. I'm trying to think of what did I blow a lot of stupid money on, And I I forget, and I do blow money. My wife will tell you that I'm horrible with money. But what I remember my most fond is experiences. The experience of being able to be with my wife as she finished her first half marathon. That's probably one of my favorite things of 2020 was that,
And yeah, and those experiences, they bypass my cheap filter because I'll be like, oh, I'll give you an example, Sonoma 50 miler.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if I ever had the chance to do that one, it's lottery now, so I don't even know how to work that out. But that was a experience where I was in Sonoma.
Mm-hmm.
I think the race was like maybe $200, but you got some really cool swag. And just staying in and doing wine tours the day before and the day after the 50 miler was just, I'll take that with me to the grave and be like, that was time well spent. That was money well spent. Mm-hmm. Beautiful country.
Oh, I remember it was Superior 100 a couple of years ago. The experience of my dad was there working an aid station or accruing me. He's not a runner. My dad's, just a guy, just a dad. He was there and my son was there, and just the experience of going through all that with them. I mean, that's not only was the scenery beautiful, but it was the experience of here I am with my
getting
father,
to share it
with my son. There's 3 generations of us all out here together. That's probably one of my favorite memories.
I mean, it's beyond the icing on the cake in the sense that when you get to experience something like that, and then you get to share it with your family, they don't get how important that is a lot of times. If they do, that's wonderful. But when you get to finish and see your son or daughter or wife or dad, it makes it such a wonderful, rewarding experience, as opposed to which is often the case. You finish, your family's only waiting for you to come home and get back to whatever you were doing and wondering why you're taking so long.
Right. For me, with the one with my dad was especially wonderful because I have always kind of used my dad as my alpha male. And what I mean by that is I judge all success in manliness against my dad, right? Mm-hmm. So my dad is hardworking, faithful, loving, kind. He is all these things that I look at like, this should be, for me, this is what the ideal man is. Someone who works hard, loves his family, is his word means something. If he says he's going to be there, he's going to be there. And so growing up, my dad was always my hero. You have other heroes, right? Luke Skywalker was a hero of mine, but my dad was always at the top. He was the Zeus of my Mount Olympus of heroes. And so having him there and seeing him look at me slightly the way I look at him my entire life, and to see that this pride that he had, like, oh, I guess I did all right. That was priceless. And that's something that I'll probably never. It was that first time he was there, he saw it, and that was something I hold on to. And it was a life-changing experience.
Absolutely. I think you just described the last scene in Bambi.
Is that what it was? Was I watching Bambi? Was that what it was?
Yeah, the buck that's he's always in the distance. He's always kind of staying out of the way. And at the very end, Bambi's like, now I'm the man. And he's up there with his dad. And he's like, his dad looks at him. He's like, all right. And then he disappears. And he's
my dad's still around. My dad hasn't disappeared. So
no, I mean, I'm saying he didn't it was just a metaphor.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, for sure. But that was God, I love even thinking about that. That's a great memory to pull from. That's for sure.
So we'll wrap this up by saying, I want to know a few tips that you do today that keep you motivated and keep you on track. Because we all have, this is a big misnomer. Mm-hmm. You never silence the critic and the desire to listen to that voice that's saying, you're never going to be good enough, Ryan.
Right.
You actually have the right to be angry. Let's try being angry. What do you do today on a day-to-day basis that you find it's easier to keep Ryan in check. So you can just share some little tidbits.
Okay.
Maybe it's part of your routine, or maybe someone that you run with, whatever it is.
Yeah. One thing is I remind myself constantly that I am not my thoughts. And what I mean by that is our thoughts are our brain's way of interjecting into our life, and it's a lot of static and a lot of noise, and our thoughts are influenced by the people around us, the food we consume, basically our environment. Our environment influences our thoughts. And so I have to remind myself constantly that that voice is not real. It's just chatter. It's just senseless.
Monkey mind. Yeah.
It is. It's just senseless chatter. And to remember that, just push it away, push it away. Why am I feeling this way? Okay. Did I eat something this morning? Oh, I haven't done that. Okay. I need to eat something. My blood sugar is probably low. When's the last time I had some water? Oh, I'm probably dehydrated. That's what it is. And just remembering that and putting those things in place. I think something too is live for others. Make others the focus of your life. Live for your family, live for your spouse. Ask yourself, the choices I'm making, how do they benefit them? What am I doing to better their lives? And I think the third thing is just whenever you can, choose happiness. Choose happiness and choose to look at things as positive as you can. Now, sometimes you can't look at things positive. Shit happens. Real bad shit happens, right? And it's okay to allow yourself to go through those processes. But if the bad shit that's happening is someone cut you off in traffic, well, you don't know what they may be on the phone with the loved one that is in the hospital, so they're distracted. And so they didn't mean to cut you off because they hate you. They're just dealing with some crap. If that's the bad shit that puts you in a bad mood, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. Make that choice to be happy.
These actually tie into each other, because to choose happiness, you have to say, in many ways, you say, I am not my thoughts here. I am above my thoughts.
Yep.
I am going to choose to be a better person. And it goes back to our theme of the thoughts could be a way of saying, I'm not the stimulus that I feel. It's what I choose to respond is what I am.
Yep. Exactly.
Or at least in the indication of it. And then living for others. And I think that's a big part of what you bring to the running community, is saying, I want to share stories of others that are going to inspire people to do things they didn't think was possible. And in some cases, just enjoying the experience of running itself a little more.
Oh, for sure. And I know a lot of people that maybe you don't have a running partner, because running partners, God, that makes running. There's so many days when I'd be like, if I wasn't meeting, Travis or Stafford or whomever, I'd be like, I'd be on the couch.
Accountability is the golden nugget of running. If you're someone who has to get motivated, actually, because I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to let people down.
Yeah.
So if nobody's going to be let down, there's a decent chance I'll let myself down. But I heard this tip the other day, and it was, you're called an obliger, by the way, if you don't like letting other people down. There's like 4 personalities, and an obliger doesn't like to let people down. So if your training partner is obliger, what they would do is you take one of their shoes home and they take one of yours, so that if you show up to the trail and they don't, you can't go running. So those are the type of people you're putting a whole level of accountability and saying, if one of us doesn't show up, neither of us get to exercise.
I like that. I
do too, man.
I like that a lot. I really do.
I think both of us are the kind of, if we just say we're going to be there at a particular time, we're going to be there.
I'll be there early.
Yeah. And bring the White Claw.
Yeah. Well, that's for afterwards. Actually is so funny that actually started off as a joke. My wife had got some, and Jeff Stafford was over.
Are you officially an ambassador for them?
No,
now,
they don't even know who the hell I am. Okay. It became this joke that it is the least manly drink in popular culture right now. It is the Zima of
we did. I think we did
in.
say it was a lot like Zima.
Yeah, and so it's. I've always thought it's fun to, because we live in this craft beer world where everybody is like, oh, it has hops and it's 7% alcohol by volume and that sort of thing. And
with the big mustache, the
Yes,
handlebar.
yeah, big mustache and really tight jeans. That's like the manliest beverage.
Suspenders.
Yes, the manliest beverage you can have is a microbrew, and the least manly beverage you can have is a White Claw. And so flipping those expectations and just kind of running with that joke, it's so funny because, I mean, that's what people think I drink all the time.
Yeah.
I don't, but no, that was a joke that I just kind of rode.
Yeah.
And some people are tired of it. And I get those emails, and other people, it's kind of, they bring it up. So that's always funny. But I was, to finish my point that I tried to start, with the podcast, giving people, if you don't have a running partner, just download the podcast and it feels like you have some, right? Like you're able to listen to this conversation, and maybe my dumb joke helps you get through some miles, that makes it all worth it. I love when people are like, hey, I'm saving this for this tough run this weekend, you know? And to think about that, there's people that go through the process of taking out their phone, going to their podcast provider of choice, downloading it. There's a lot to do to listen to a podcast. You just can't you just don't turn your car on and a podcast is on.
And it used to be much more difficult like 10 years ago.
God, it used to be so hard. But so the fact that people do that, and I think about this sometimes, like, oh my God, there's people that are listening to something I recorded, and it's helping them to get through some miles, or it's bringing them some joy. It's like that. Golly, that's the coolest thing in the world. You almost have to stop thinking about it because you're like, wow, that's kind of awesome.
Ryan, today you have definitely brought me joy, and I've learned a ton from you, buddy, and continue to do so.
Well, we need to get together one of these days in real life again. When COVID's all done, we don't want people thinking that Ryan and Daniel don't follow COVID restrictions. And we both live in the state that's number one for new cases. So it may be a while before we do, but we need to get together soon.
Fair enough, buddy. I look forward to it, man.
Sounds good.
Wow, what a great conversation with Ryan. I call it a conversation because it was more of two runners exchanging insights and tips than it was necessarily an interview. Also, I talked a little too much. But the three biggest takeaways that I got from that were that you are not your thoughts. Live for others and choose to be happy. Those are three things that we can do every day. In that time where you're training whatever you choose to do, focusing on those three things this week, see if that brings you a little bit of joy. I'd love to hear your feedback and maybe share some of your insights on what training brings to your life. This is Daniel Lucas. Thank you for listening to Chasing Energy. Have a great week.